I'm proud of you, you know that.
Greetings, fellow mortals. Just a reminder saying it's just my opinion is for cowards. Recently, I have been absolutely obsessed with the new Capcom game Pragmata. Long story short with it, you are an engineer sent to a moon base called the Cradle to figure out why no one is responding to your calls. Your entire team is slaughtered, and you're forced to team up with an android who looks like a little girl in order to defeat a bunch of robots who can't be defeated unless she hacks them and opens them up for you. And this entire experience was absolutely brilliant for me. While the overall sci-fi setup is by the numbers and you could predict the plot if you are given 3 chances to name everything that's going to happen, the characters and their father-daughter relationship carry it forward into one of my favorite things of 2026 thus far. And my overall favorite aspects of the game are twofold from a storytelling perspective. One is the theme of the child always listening, observing, and learning from father figures in the game. Without too many spoilers, there are in fact 2 Pragmata girls, Diana and 8, who learn drastically different lessons from their mentor characters, and this shapes who they are on a fundamental level. It reminds me of the Fishman Island arc from One Piece, where a major point in the arc overall was that the children are constantly watching and learning from everything that the adults say and do. And this is actually what causes the major conflict in this arc, in this section of One Piece.
By the gods, what have I become?
You see, fishmen and merpeople receive extreme amounts of persecution from humans on the surface, to the point that they are openly enslaved on the surface, along with other species, including humans, but that's another point that can be addressed in a different video. People who actually experienced this hatred and evil on the surface shared the story and demonstrated hatred back towards the humans, to the point that the kids who never once experienced a personal interaction with any other sentient species in this universe openly despised other races and became supremacists, obsessed with slaughtering their enemies, to the point that they didn't even really care anymore about their own kind dying.
Oh, I made myself sad.
But this didn't happen to the children watching the characters who demonstrated mercy and kindness, even though they knew deep levels of pain and hatred from others. They wanted to stop the cycle of discrimination inherited by the next generation. They wanted to teach those who came after them that they could in fact be better, and that the world could be better. And that leads to the second theme of Pragmata that I enjoyed above all else. The main character that you play is Hugh, and Hugh is straight up a nice guy trying to do the right thing from the start.
I think they're just like that. I think they're just good guys.
Hugh doesn't undergo a typical hero's journey in Pragmata, except for not liking bots and kids all that much at the start of the game. He's basically the same from start to finish. His growth is his connection and his ability to care for Diana as a sentient being, as an adopted daughter. It's nice seeing what is effectively a dad simulator where the dad is a good person from the start. Instead of an angry, bitter man who hates everyone, he does try to protect Diana before even knowing what she is. He mourns the loss of his friends. He cares about the people lost on the moon base. He has a loving family. He's not bitter about people on Earth. He's just a good person trying his best in this terrible situation.
Boring.
And admittedly, yeah, I can't argue with the fact that he would be kind of boring on his own. He's not really undergoing his own character arc. Without Diana, he'd be boring, but that is the point. We really don't know what he's like when a kid isn't watching or if he's not in a professional setting. All he knows is that this sentient being who appears like a little girl is constantly watching and learning from him. So he's being as patient as possible, enduring great amounts of pain without complaint, and explaining what it means to be human to this little girl, all leading up to a very stark contrast between Diana and 8, the other Pragmata, and the entire plotline falls drastically on the nurture side of the nature versus nurture debate, because Diana and 8 start completely on the exact same level genetically, structurally, and intellectually, the only difference being who they are listening to. And there are hundreds of other themes in the game about AI, about Japanese commentary on procreation and fatherhood and family, and about the general corpo talk, which I am never against. Down with the corpos. But these are the things that stick with me the most and what I want to talk about. Hugh is in fact a perfect example for Diana and the player, being the perfect guiding figure for Diana to not only be a person beyond an android, but a good person who values the positive aspects of humanity. And the reason this resonated so much with people is because this is an aspect which seems rarer in all forms of storytelling with each passing year.
You look lonely. I can fix that.
Even stuff that I like and I enjoy don't exactly have a whole lot of examples of positive father figures anymore. The most I can think of from the Breaking Bad universe is Nacho's father, and even he failed to raise his son in a way which kept Nacho out of crime. It's a constant stream of failure after failure, loser after loser, idiot after idiot. It's why about a year and a half ago I made an entire video about the topic where I praised the characters like Bob Burger, Carl Winslow, and Uncle Phil and lament that there doesn't seem to be a lot of those figures left in media nowadays. While flawed, they're good men who unabashedly love their wives and children without limits.
First, let's get one thing straight. I'm not crying. I'm just sweating through my eyes.
At the very best, even the positive examples of fathers are often mocked for being too silly and for trying too hard, like Phil Dunphy, beaten down by almost everyone despite constantly being there as a rock for his family. And when they're not, they're broken, sad dad tropes like Joe Miller from The Last of Us, Din from The Mandalorian, and Wolverine from Logan. For some reason, that seems to be the most acceptable form of badass fathers which are allowed to exist in entertainment, and don't get me wrong, Logan might be my single most favorite comic book movie ever made, right up there with Joker for themes and Guardian of the Galaxy for terms of fun factor. You're welcome to disagree with that, it's fine, but it is what it is, it's what I like.
Well, hang on, you've just...
No, I like it. This is brilliant. But I like this.
And don't get me wrong, I do in fact love the sad dad trope. It just tickles something at the back of my brain, especially with Logan, because Wolverine has demonstrated that he can be an excellent mentor to younger characters several times over through the course of the movies alone. Not perfect, but he was a man trying his best, and at the end of his life he gave everything so that the next generation could have a chance at a better future. Because, you know, men have the odd fantasy of dying for a greater cause than themselves, bleeding out on the snow-covered steps knowing that your life and death actually meant something. I cannot begin to articulate why this trope just ignites a section of men's brains, but it does, so there's that.
Just hook it to my veins!
Anyway, the point is that Pragmata ignites a section of men's brains that most can't articulate eloquently. They see Diana looking up to Hugh as a hero and as someone to appreciate and to mimic, and their hearts outright melt. This is because of what Diana demonstrates to Hugh. This is what most men actually desire. There's this theory that I have. Men want to be needed while women need to be wanted. What this means is that deep down men have this internal desire that if they disappear, everything falls apart. Meanwhile, if women disappear, they desperately want to be missed. You can disagree with that. Please leave a comment explaining why you would, but that's just my theory.
I'm just saying.
To break this down in terms of storytelling, if Hugh wasn't there in Pragmata, if Wolverine wasn't there in Logan, if Joel wasn't there in The Last of Us, then Diana, then Laura, then Ellie wouldn't have made it. The male characters are needed, they need to exist, and that ignites something in men's brains. If you want some sort of moral or religious argument, condemnation, or condonement for this case, I'm sorry, I don't have that. This is simply an observation from a guy who loves storytelling. In these stories, if the man isn't there, everyone dies at the start and no story actually happens. And this is what men desperately want.
But wait! There's more!
I could see both sides arguing that I'm coming from some sort of ideology because everything is tainted by politics nowadays, but that's not where my filthy, flip-floppy, centrist brain lies. There is obviously a hole in the world right now that even more left-leaning forms of entertainment that I enjoy express in some way. If you want excellent examples, simply look at Adolescence and Louis Theroux Into the Manosphere. They're brilliant works of art which point a finger at a terrible, horrific symptom but do nothing to diagnose the reason behind the problems or the solution to the symptoms. Instead, they just point at the problem with these people who notice that there is a hole in the world and are grifting off of it.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Adolescence points a harsh finger at the manosphere and its possible harsh consequences, at least to the logical conclusion for teenagers and young men. Yes, the source material is a little bit different, but I understand what they're trying to say here. Uncontrolled access to corrupt men trying to influence teenagers leads to terrible, terrible results. Because Adolescence is fiction based on reality, it's a cautionary tale. Meanwhile, Into the Manosphere is a deep look into the flawed, pain-filled people behind this type of content. None of them are happy, content, or even okay in any single conceivable way, and it shows through every part of their lives.
Life sucks, and then you die.
You will never see me defend the likes of Andrew Tate, Fresh and Fit, and many, many more different influencers because they are obviously reprehensible. The problem isn't that they suck and that it's very easy to make breakdowns about why they suck. It's because these breakdowns into the manosphere don't fill the void that's created by the demand for this type of content, for young men trying to find influences to help them navigate the world. It's basic economics. Demand doesn't simply disappear overnight if you get rid of the supply chain. And I don't particularly want these toxic creators being around and influencing young men to think terrible, terrible things. I want them gone. Instead, I want there to be more positive influences. And when asked about this, what we could do possibly to fill this need, Adolescence and Into the Manosphere decide to fart, stick their thumbs up their asses, and shrug their shoulders.
I don't know.
That is the ultimate question nowadays. These obviously flawed, self-interested, and idiotic people on the internet are wrong and toxic and horrible. So what is the alternative? What can we use to fill the gap? And right now, there are two other alternatives. Complete and utter silence on the demand, or religion. So you're given three options. Being religious, listening to idiots, or not having any guidance at all other than to trust the people in their lives. And there are young men who don't have any father figures in their lives at all. Their father isn't around. They don't have any coaches or any mentor figures to trust. So there's a void that is trying to be filled right now, and there are no really positive solutions out there.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It's why the absolute meltdown about Pragmata is one of the most flabbergasting situations I've ever seen. At least with Gooner games like Stellar Blade, that makes sense. Eve has the body of a model turned up to 15 out of 10, and it's 100% a fantasy that delights in the fact that men find the main character attractive. Meanwhile, Pragmata just praises the player for protecting this little girl. Your best is good enough. It's not toxic or evil or corrupt, and if you have to use Reddit as a counter argument, you're wrong, because Reddit is Reddit, and Reddit is the worst thing ever created. If you're going to point at a subreddit that was closed down to argue against me, I do not accept that.
I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong.
So Pragmata is bad, right? And the other options of being absurdly religious, having no guidance, or being told over and over again that it's not your fault are all okay. Why do you think the manosphere movement took off? I don't know, maybe try to compete with it using positive examples like Hugh. Pragmata took over the internet for a solid month. It's not that hard. There's a literal thirst out there in the world for positive examples in both fiction and reality of father figures, of someone to give any sort of advice, to set a good example, to be the ideal. And the absolute best that we can get right now is someone pointing a finger at the bad examples and saying that it is bad. Okay, that's fair. What do you suggest? Hugh is bad. What else do we have? Nothing? Oh, okay, that's great. Thanks.
What did I just tell you?
You might be thinking that this is absurd. No one could look at fiction, see heroic characters, and think that this is something that I should strive to be, except it actually happens in real life with Freerin, where people in real life made choices based on the fact of what Himmel the hero would do. While I'm not foolish enough to blame violence or anything else on fiction, I can readily admit that feeding ideas into someone's heads affect their mindset, and outright telling them that something is inherently wrong with them with no way of fixing that leads to despair.
Well, this sucks.
It's why I like these positive examples of fatherhood in fiction. The Hughes, the Hank Hills, the post-2018 God of War Kratos, the Logans, even The Last of Us, even if Druckmann repeatedly shoots himself in the several times while crying over a bottle of tequila at least once a day. Okay, things are bad right now, admittedly. I'm not going to deny that. Politicians, celebrities, and even athletes kind of suck epic donkey balls. Why not at least give a fictional example of what you think the ideal is? Something better than oneself that people can strive for. Why not do that other than the fact that you're afraid and for some reason Hugh gives you the creeps? I don't understand.
So I am confusion. Why is this one Kansas, but this one is not Arkansas?
If there has been a proven positive effect from fiction, why not make more Himmels, Hughes, or Hank Hills, where at least the flawed man is constantly trying to be better instead of constantly falling back into old habits? Parks and Rec ended over a decade ago, and I still can't think of a sitcom or episodic show where a male character who was good with his hands, rugged, and interested in the outdoors was portrayed in a positive manner as a mentor to younger characters until Hugh from Pragmata. And if you can think of an example between the years of 2015 and 2026, please tell me. I might be spacing on them, but I feel like there was a drastic drought period there. Oh wait, what about Stoic from How to Train Your Dragon 2? No, that was in 2014, and Stoic died as soon as he became a good father, and then they ruined the series by separating the dragons from the people. Never mind on that one.
Disappointed!
Okay, admittedly, there is kind of King of the Hill right now because it's been continuing and showing the positive outcomes of being a father. Bobby Hill is a hardworking, loyal, well-adjusted, and ambitious young man in the show. Hank did an excellent job setting up an example for Bobby and allowing his son to become the ideal version of himself. They even had a miniature storyline with Hank's half-brother, GH, where they make fun of the manosphere and point out that there is a need for positive male role models right now, which Hank starts to be for his half-brother. It was the one time where this type of storyline was used and didn't just throw their hands into the air when asked for a solution other than constantly chastising boys and young men like in Adolescence, which doesn't work. So I'll give credit to King of the Hill. Really looking forward to that next season, by the way.
No notes?
No notes.
No notes.
No notes.
No notes.
No notes. It's perfect.
Even something as cynical as The Boys openly points to this problem, despite its many flaws. Season 5 repeatedly points out that Homelander would have turned out better if there was a single male role model in his life to give him positive examples. He is so thirsty for guidance and some kind of acknowledgement that he's willing to be called crazy if someone simply gives him a pat on the shoulder. Meanwhile, Huey, who is the most positive example of masculinity in the show, is often mocked, belittled, beaten, and even shamed for being SA'd by everyone around him, all because the writers are the biggest bunch of idiots on the planet, seeing one problem and then demeaning any sort of real solution to it.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
So what exactly is the solution? Maybe make fathers, mentors, and some male characters that can be set up as positive examples. I'm not saying to have them be perfect because that is boring, but they could be portrayed as morally good, as people trying their best instead of irredeemable assholes who ruin the lives of everyone that they touch. Stories have been around as long as humans have been able to communicate with each other. Tales have been told to each other as ways to teach lessons. Fairy tales were used to warn children and to scare them enough to keep them from doing stupid things which would get them killed, like wandering into the forest alone. Maybe try to show what your actual ideal is and give positive examples when the boomers who are constantly in charge right now fail miserably in their every single task.
Oh, it's so obvious. I would have never thought of that.
You can even look at something like Goofy. Yes, that Goofy from Disney. If you examine his story as a father from Goof Troop, where Max was a kid, The First Christmas Story, the Goofy movie where teenage rebellion is at the very forefront, The House of Mouse, where Max gets his first job, the extremely goofy movie where Max goes to college, and then the Second Christmas Story where Max brings home a girlfriend for the first time. This guy is a good father who taught his son how to be a good person, how to keep a clean home, how to cook, and how to treat others who wronged him with positivity. While he was a klutz, it wasn't Goofy's fatherly aspects that made him silly. That was the part that was most endearing, the part that made him cool, that made him an actual good example for a person who trips over himself all the time.
Baby!
failure. Failure. You're still a failure.
And then Max Goof just disappeared from fiction for the most part. He appeared, I think, as a cameo in the rebooted DuckTales, but besides that, there's really nothing anymore. We have a desperate demand for father content right now, for someone functioning as a dad and setting a good example, but instead all we have are cautionary tales. I'm sorry, maybe someone could be good at this point, show us the ideal of how we should be rather than the worst case scenario. And I'm saying this as someone with a -2 interest in having children of his own, even after Pragmata. Could we perhaps have a bit more dad propaganda, please?
Please, sir. I want some more.
Alright, fair enough. These negative examples suck. I can't deny that. What about some positive ones that aren't just straight up religious? No, and you outright spit on Hugh and people who are inspired by Pragmata to demonstrate the positive traits of masculinity? Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. What a great help you are, erasing what you think father figures should be and then not helping in the slightest with half of the damn population. Maybe that's why young men are falling into the obvious fiction of the manosphere. Maybe that's why the most positive examples of someone lecturing men and how to be good lost his damn mind after going to Russia and joining the Daily Wire, of all place. Yeah, I'm not a fan of modern Jordan Peterson, but I used to like him.
Thank your father, kids.
Thanks, Dad.
Was Jordan Peterson perfect? Oh, hell no. Was he trying at the start? Yep. Would I prefer that version of the guy over the manosphere? Is that a real question? Yes, please, make some more father propaganda. Make positive examples in fiction at the very least. Create ideals that people struggle to meet, but can still move forward and try to be this best version of themselves. Because what other choice do we have? Leaving young men to the manosphere? Is that really what you want? Because without any sort of guidance, they're destined to follow the one group willing to offer them water when they're dying of dehydration in the desert.
Well, somebody better be dying. I'm dying.
And all this is coming from a happily married man. Pragmata, Logan, and King of the Hill didn't convince me to be a dad, but I sure as hell would appreciate more attempts to convince me. It's a breath of fresh air to meet a desperate need that a large demographic is begging for. Please, more dad propaganda. I and everyone else would like that very much. It's what we want. For the love of God, stop leaving us to starve out here in a flood of shows, movies, and games where the father is the worst person ever. Because we're desperate for a few good stories before we disengage and just stop caring. But what do you think? Do you disagree with me on my analysis? What examples that I didn't think of that you really liked? Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you disagree with everything I have to say, that is perfectly fine. After all, everyone is entitled to their objectively wrong opinion.
Look, the point I'm trying to make is nobody is born cool. Except, of course.
Thank you all so much for watching.
You're still here?
Good night, everybody. Thank you. You bye. Boom.
Do not despair.